did write my first feature with There Comes a Knocking, but recently I'm having to dive into that even more, sometimes even on a deadline. So that's got me thinking a lot about my process and how I get into that creative realm and what I do to keep myself there and moving forward. So I wanted to talk a bit about that today, not about the ones and zeros of what actual structure is or the different types of structure. We'll mention it, but we're not going to dive into that. So less on how to write and more on how to start writing. And to do that, I asked my friend Ricky Staub to help me out on this episode because he has a similar sensibility to myself, and he just finished writing and directing his first feature starring Idris Elba. So he had a lot of really good ideas that I wanted to bring to you guys as well. So I'm gonna let him start it out.
What's up, guys? My name is Ricky Staub from Neighborhood Film Company, and I'm going to share some tips for you on how we break story when we're starting out a script. So the first thing that is absolutely terrifying for every single writer out there is facing the blank page. So what we do is we don't make it blank. The first thing I like to do is actually build a file system. I'll open the script up, I'll put the title on, I'll put my name, I'll put the date. I just like to be able to see that I've started. You know, having little goals to make you feel like you're making progress makes the spirit feel good. So that's something that we do. We just set up the script, and we like to see that, you know, someday soon there'll be 100 pages after that first page, but it just feels good to get started.
I really love that idea about just putting something on the title page, just getting something down on paper to feel like you've gotten started. I think that's such a great way in. And to be clear, at this point, what I'm talking about is breaking a story for a concept that already exists, which is what got me thinking about this episode to begin with. There's just this concept that people are interested in, and now I have to break this story. And for me, that means shower time. There's something about the shower that is really just such a perfect idea hub. I think it's the white noise of the water, the fact that you can't touch your phone, you can't look at social media, there are no distractions, it's just you and your thoughts. And the main thing that I'm cracking at this stage is, who is this about? Who is that person? What are they going through? What will change in them and how? For me, this is a massive guiding force in figuring out my beginning, middle, and end, since the character and the theme of the story is going to be what drives that inevitable ending. Those things are what will lead you to that moment when you say, of course, this is it. It has to be this, because it ties perfectly into your story, character, and theme. But I'm also just thinking about any and all ideas that revolve around this. Anything that pops into my head, a line of dialogue, a moment, a set piece, a trailer moment, an image that enforces theme, all of that, and then I will log it in using Evernote and voice recording on my phone. Whatever I have available at the time, I'm just chucking it into there, and I'll collect it into a space later. A lot of the time, I don't even really go back and look at that unless I'm stuck. It's just getting these ideas turning in your head, and the ones that you remember are the ones that stick and end up in the final document. And of course, research is a big thing to help me from getting stuck. So if I'm writing something in a courtroom, I'll go watch a bunch of courtroom videos. I'll read articles about that. And reading those real life things, real situations, will really give you a lot of ingredients to start cooking up some other ideas you wouldn't have had otherwise. But once you have all these ideas down, you know your beginning, middle, and end, then what?
The next thing we do is we have some very practical resources that we rely on to start filling those pages. I think the biggest problem for a lot of writers is that they have these big, beautiful, grand ideas, but it's so hard to take them from your brain and actually put them onto the page. And so there are some really practical resources out there. I'm sure you know, you've heard of structure and outline and all these things, but what are the actual resources people are using? Well, I'm gonna show you what we actually use. So there's a book, you've probably heard me talk about it. I think it's amazing. I don't know this author, Blake Snyder, but this book is awesome, and it's so simple. And that's why I love it, actually, is it takes the really complicated ideas in my mind and helps me funnel them through this prism and say, okay, how do I take a complex idea and make it simple for a film? You know, there's a great analogy that I think someone told to me once. I don't think I made it up, but they're saying what makes films great is not their structure. You know, just like what makes a t-shirt great is not its structure. Every t-shirt has a hole for the head, 2 holes for the arms, and a hole to get your body in. But changing that structure, putting 2 holes for 2 heads that don't exist, does not make the t-shirt better. What makes the t-shirt great are those little intricacies that are delicate and specific to your voice, not the structure of the actual shirt. And so what I like to do is take the structure of the film off the plate. And what's really great about the book Save the Cat is it lays out very simple structures for all kinds of different movies. And if your movie is a let's say it's a fish out of water story. It tells you all the tropes and things that are typically involved in those types of stories. And then you can apply your idea and put it into that format. Now, this might seem to a lot of you, even as I say, and I remember finding the book, is like, oh, it's gonna make my story so generic. But again, that is not what makes your story unique. What makes your story unique is your vision, your characters, your voice, the people you see in this world, the way that you paint that world, the way that it flows from beginning to end, the way that you uniquely craft them. That's what makes your story your story.
Structure can be a dirty word for people, but the truth is every film has a beginning, middle, and end, and that is a structure. No matter what way you cut it, there is some form of structure to every film that you watch. We can get into structure in another episode and debate all about that, but like Ricky, I'm also a fan of structure, or mile markers as he called it in our podcast. Points that you know you want to hit, and knowing these points are a great guide, at least for me, when trying to walk through that beginning desert wasteland of the blank page. Save the Cat does something like a 3-act structure, I believe, and 15 major beats to hit. I read it around 2010 and forgot all about it, but the ideas from that book stuck in the back of my mind and were a springboard to my own process. For me, I'm usually thinking more in terms of 6 acts. Act 1A and B, 2A and B, 3A and B. And this is especially useful for me in the Act 2 desert. Like Ricky, I do split the second act up as well because I think it makes it pace better and it makes it a less daunting space to travel. Now this process might change. The way that I found my way through in the last few years has evolved overall and changed a bit depending on story too. But at this point, building out the structure, as far as tools go, I'm still in Evernote. Although Slugline 2 was just released, and full disclosure, I am friends with one of its creators, Stu Maschwitz, but this new version has a way of outlining that I really love, so I think I'll be moving off of Evernote and into Slugline 2 for that part of the process going forward, since you can create your acts and beats and easily move things around. It's pretty badass, so I'll put a link to that in the notes. But again, at this point, I'm building out my beats, where I think they should fall in the acts, and I'm still not touching the script yet since I don't like to actually start writing until I have all my major beats built out where I can see them, rearrange them, pitch those ideas to people and watch their reaction, and so on. Ricky does something similar here too, but his is more of a physical thing, not something like Evernote.
We'll throw up tons of ideas literally onto a wall, onto note cards, and we'll ask ourselves, what are all the ideas that are in our heads? Because I like to empty my mind so that the ideas that are in my heads are now physically written down. And for me, it actually creates a mental space where I can fill it with some new concepts, because I feel like I'm holding on to them if I don't actually write them down. And so we start by doing that. And then we literally take, with Save the Cat and some other structural devices that we've had, we actually work in a 4-act structure, so that essentially the second act of a 3-act structure is broken into 2 acts. But for me, what that helps alleviate is most scripts die in the middle, because if you think of a 3-act structure in 120 pages, that means the first 30 are the first act, the second act is 60, and the third act is another 30, but that doesn't actually make sense to me. So what we also do is, myself and my writing partner, Dan, we always try to keep our scripts under 100 pages if we can. And so if you break out 4 acts, that's 25 pages per act. It makes the script move a lot faster. But I'm gonna show you something actually. So we write down every single scene and beat of the movie as we can conceive it. This right here, if you can see this, that right there, that is literally every single scene of Concrete Cowboy. And as we go through writing, we have every single scene written down. And what also creates an enormous level of satisfaction is once you've written a scene, you get to highlight the section on the outline. I know this is like super dorky and nerdy, but it feels so good to get to the end and have all your scenes highlighted, because that means you've written all your scenes.
So now I'm finally writing the script, right? Wrong. Again, this might not work for everyone, but my writing is rewriting, and I like to do that from the smallest stage up. So my idea dump turns into a rough act map showing the major points, which then drills down further into the major beats. And of course, at this point, I have the character, I know who they are, what they want, and what they need. So now with that built, my major beats turn into scenes, and I start a rough treatment, a very concise telling of the whole story from beginning to end, with the intention of landing all of the ideas ideas and tone of the main piece. So this ends up usually for me landing somewhere between 13 and 20 pages, but it encompasses the entire story. What's great about this is it lets me see if the story is working in a very simple way, and I can show trusted friends to get some feedback on these ideas. Of course, at this stage, you need to be extremely careful who you show. The boat is still on rough waters, and you're likely not fully confident in it yet, so the right feedback is key. But after that, I take that treatment and start turning it into the script. I copy over what I have, placing it under proper scene headings, and I start rewriting and filling things in. For me, this keeps me from ever feeling overwhelmed at that beginning point, from ever feeling discouraged by that blank page because I've already filled it in before I even started. It's a psychological trick that I do to myself, but it seems to be working really well. So by the time I start actually writing the film, I've already done a ton of work, and the writing gets to be a fun playground of ideas and construction. But it all starts with filling those beats or mile markers.
I think having those little goals, those super small mile markers, pays huge dividends, because eventually, you know, if you've done this every day for weeks and weeks on end, you'll see that you've taken this big idea that's been sitting in your head for so long, and you've made practical steps of progress to put it on the page. And the biggest part is you've got to get out the bad ideas for the beautiful ideas to flourish. Like, you know, writing is rewriting, everyone says that, but that part of the process you have to enjoy is just, you got to get your ideas on the page. And so really, you know, whether it's Save the Cat, whatever act structure you like, figure out the designs of structure that work for you and your spirit and your writing, and, you know, go forward and write with those.
Although Ricky and I are both talking about features, this does work for short films as well, although my personal process for short films is a little bit different. There's less work in the front end involved before I start getting writing. It's not as detailed before I start into the actual script, and there's no treatment involved when I'm doing just a short film. But to also say the obvious, we're absolutely not saying this is how you should definitely do it. We're just saying that these are the methods that have been working for us. If thinking about structure doesn't help you, throw it out. If the idea of 6 acts sounds ridiculous to you, then ignore it. What I think is most valuable about getting other people's process is getting bits of ideas that might work for you and helping that to refine your own process. Or just not feeling alone because you're hearing other creators like yourself dealing with and navigating the same things you are. What matters is the destination, not how you get there. That is completely up to what works best for you. Find the process that helps you get writing and helps you continue writing. And this episode wasn't about detail on structure or the story ideas. Like I said before, we may do that in another episode. For this, I really just wanted to focus on the process of getting into the process. Because again, it's what I've currently been going through professionally. In the last 2 years, I've had to build out this process for myself very quickly. And so far, this is what's really helped me continue down that path and get the work done. So hopefully you found it